Hi, welcome to another live coaching. It is Sunday, the 23rd of August, and yeah, it's another week of live coaching. So if this is your first time joining us, here's the deal. Every week, I do a coaching session completely for free for anyone who wants to join. All you have to do is join the Facebook group and post a question, a photo, or a video, and I'll go over that on Sunday. So the sessions last about an hour, and the content, like what I do my coaching on, is based on what's posted in the group for the previous week. And so it's pretty relaxed. Basically, you just post whatever question or photo or video that you have, and then I go through it and talk about my perspective and whatever tips I can offer. We've got a lot of new people in the group this last week, which is great to see. So hopefully we'll have some more footage. We've got a lot of regulars who have been here through the whole journey, which is really great to see. Hey, Tomas. Yeah, so it's been a really fun process. When I started doing this coaching back in April, I didn't think I would like it so much, but it's been really fun. And yeah, so have you guys been sailing while we're waiting for people to join? Type in the chat. Tell me if you had wind this week. I sailed. Yesterday I went up to Rum. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's an island in Denmark, just north of Sylt, and was not great conditions. I was on a 4.5, pretty powered up, and it was pretty onshore, but I'm still recovering with my knee, so I'm not picky at all. I sailed for about 5 hours, because I haven't had much sailing at all in the last few weeks, and so I was jonesing for it. And yep, I'm pretty sore today from that. But hoping that you guys had some good conditions. I saw some good photos posted around. Yeah, Martin Vissant looked really good. I saw a picture that Jules Denal posted. Looked like you guys got great conditions. Definitely better than what I was getting in Denmark. Looked really good. All right. Yeah, so tell me a bit more about what you guys were doing while we wait for people to show up, and then we'll get into the coaching. Oh no, Carl, your GoPro broke. Ouch. Yeah. How long do I sail on average? It really depends on the conditions. I don't mind sailing long, so sometimes I sail for 3-4 hours at a time, but I think I prefer to do maybe 2-hour session, maybe two 2-hour sessions in a day is perfect for me, or a 2-hour session and a 1-hour session. Cool. Some hurricane wind. Sailing in Copenhagen. I really want to sail in Copenhagen. I didn't really know that there was good windsurfing in Copenhagen, but I've found that out recently, and I think that's really interesting. So I'd love to check it out. Yeah, how are the conditions, Rich? Oh no, Nils, I'm sorry to hear that about the bad day on the water. What happened? In the coaching, we talk so much about moves, like forward loops or bottom turns or whatever, but actually fear and dealing with bad days are just as important to talk about, if not more important, actually. So tell us what went wrong, what was bad about it, and at least we'll commiserate with you, or maybe there's even some tips. I've got a few tips. I've had a lot of bad days, a lot of very frustrating days where I question everything. Yeah, Rich, I love that. I love that feeling of just sailing, not coming in. And then you're exhausted. My hands, because I haven't sailed much because of my knee injury, my hands are so soft, they get pretty sore because I'm just not used to holding onto the boom. So I don't have any holes, but they're sore. So tell us about that bad day. We all know that feeling of having bad days. I think also, especially when you're trying to get better, it opens it up for more bad days somehow. This is something that I've been meaning to talk about for a little bit, where when you're really focusing on learning, sometimes it can lead to frustrating situations because you're not improving as fast as you'd like to, you're not able to do what you want to be doing, or two, you're too in your head. That's also a big problem. Learning, the biggest challenge or paradox with learning is that you learn all these moves and what to do with one side of your brain, but then when you're actually doing it on the water, you need to be using the other side of your brain. You don't want to be thinking too much. And so that can be really difficult, and it's especially difficult when you're learning. So I have a few little techniques that I use myself to kind of break myself out of those situations or to help avoid that kind of situation. So for example, when we're talking about a move like the bottom turn, there's a lot of tips that I'm talking about when I'm giving the advice, the coaching. But for each wave or even each day, if you just focus on one of those, maybe it's the wide grip, maybe it's turning your hips into the turn, just focusing on one of those things, and you're not focusing on anything else, you're not thinking too much, you just pick one element to focus on, and you just make sure you're doing that, and that becomes your focus, whether it's the wide grip or turning your hips or whatever it is. And by just focusing on one thing, then you're not thinking too much. In fact, it can even get you out of thinking, because instead of focusing on the whole step-by-step process, you're just focusing on a part of it, which then kind of can take your brain out of the other parts, which can be good. And then it also makes it more executable, right? Like if you're thinking of all the things you have to do, it's going to be pretty hard. But if you're just doing one at a time, you can do it. So one day you're focusing on the wide grip, the next day you're focusing on whatever it is for the move. And then over time, you learn it. Nothing happens in a day. And it's hard then when you're putting pressure on yourself. So, if you're not getting the right waves and you're feeling pressure, then you do get the right wave and then you mess up, which just sounds like what happened. And, that's an experience that I know as well. It's something that can happen. It can happen in competitions. It can happen just sailing. It's definitely a feeling that I know. Rich, for visualizing front loops, that sounds great. The other tip for learning the front loops is doing that like standing catapult. So on an area where you're not fully powered, because you don't want to have full power in your sail. You could try it with full power in your sail. I don't know if that's then scary, but you're not planing anyway. You're barely moving. You're just standing on the board out of the straps, and you do the motion and you jump using your legs, and the sail will kind of do that flip, that catapult, that's rotation, and you just hold on to the boom and you'll get flung into the water on the other side of the board. Make sure you keep holding on to the boom. And if you do that 10 times, 20 times a day, it'll really get you into the motion. And I think that's the best training for the front loop. It gets you past the fear, it teaches you the sail dynamics, and it's very low risk, no risk way to do it. If you don't know what I mean, if that's confusing, make a comment or message me. I don't know if I want to talk about it more today because we've got so much stuff to go through. But if that's not clear, then I can talk about it more in the future. Looks like we've got a great... no, I'm not talking about the Waimaru. So the Waimaru, you're in the straps and you go downwind and you pop up and do that, like kind of like a wave 360 rotation. What I'm talking about, just standing on the board and you just jump off. You're out of the straps and you just jump off and you like fling around to the other side of the board. I'll see. I definitely don't have any video of me doing it, but maybe I can find something online and post it in the group, because it's a technique I've seen before, but it's by far the best way to learn forwards, I think, or to get used to the motion. I mean, there's other things you have to do, but it's pretty good. We've got a good recommendation from Tamaz, The Inner Game of Tennis, about the learning process. Cool. I have not read that, so I'll have to check that out. I'll think of other books. If there are books that I've read that have helped me with windsurfing progress, I'll think of it. None come to mind at the moment. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard then when you have all these expectation. That's also hard. You know, you're not on the water and you have a lot of expectation. I find that too. Expectation almost always leads to a bad session. So it's good to calm that down, have small goals, small focuses. I think that helps. And then it helps, like this is a big theme of mine about not projecting onto the water. So much of wave sailing is just about reading the ocean and reacting to it, not projecting onto it. And a lot of times when we have expectations, and I do this too, we all do this, it's by definition a projection because we're imagining a certain session, we're imagining a certain kind of condition and what we can do in it. But when in fact you really need to be reading what's on the water and then reacting to that. And so if you flip the script, pull back and try to observe more and then react to it, I think that creates a more satisfying and successful session. All right, so I'm going to read that book this week. That's my goal. I'm going to order it right after this. I'll check. I can't click on that link on my phone. I'll post some more stuff in the group about forwards. All right, we've got a long message from Martin. Learning to sail in mass-high waves was scary as hell. Current gets stronger, wipeouts get bigger. Yeah, you just get used to it. The more you sail in difficult conditions, timing and heading out. Yeah, it's interesting that you guys are bringing this stuff up because I was taking some notes about things that I want to talk about in future sessions or to write about, bring up in the group. And one of them is just getting around, getting over whitewater, the timing, because these are skills that are so important. They make you more comfortable on the water. They make it possible to go in bigger waves. And then they also are just safer and you're more efficient. You're able to get out, you're able to get more waves. So like crossing white waters, how to get around. It's so important. It really helps. And it's something where, I think people aren't practicing it, but it's something that's worth practicing going over white waters, and experimenting it and going out of your way to maybe push yourself a little bit to go over a whitewater that's a little bit bigger than you've ever gone over before, seeing what that's like. And then also being, the flip side of that is being really aware. And so not going out when there's a lot of whitewaters coming, not trying to make it out when there's a lot of waves, waiting for the right timing. It's really important. And a lot of these things, I think there's kind of a yin and yang side to it. So there's the one side is that, it's important to keep pushing yourself on these things, try to go over bigger whitewaters, get more and more comfortable in the conditions. But then the other side of that is, I think it's really important to know your, I don't want to say limits, because I don't like saying that you've got limits or you have to think about limits that you have, but know what conditions you can really push yourself. Because one of the most important things, and one of the safest things actually, is to be able to commit 100%. Injuries happen when you're scared and pulling back. So like, for example, with hitting a lip on a big wave, the more committed you're going, the faster you're going, the safer you'll be. You'll fall and get injured when you're scared, go on the tail, put on the brakes, and then the wave just pushes you over. But if you have speed, you have control, you're able to more easily take the power of the wave. The same thing with, I think this really transfers to a lot of aspects of windsurfing and wave riding and also other sports. You want to be able to commit 100%. And so if the conditions won't allow you to commit 100%, then you have to go in conditions that do. And that doesn't mean not sailing that day. Maybe it means going to a different spot. Or if it's the spot that, if there's only one spot, then it means, maybe riding the whitewaters in the inside, but somewhere where you can really push yourself 100%, because you don't want to get into conditions or situations where you're not able to commit, because that's the most dangerous and also where you're not learning. All right. Yeah, breathing is also super important. I really learned this when I started to compete, and I found that I was not breathing regularly because I guess I was getting nervous. And so just focusing on my breaths, taking deep breaths. You can do just whatever, normal deep breaths, or you can do box breathing. So that's like how I was taught it, and I'm sure there's different ways. But it's like you breathe in for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, and then continue that process, which is a good way to kind of calm your mind, make sure your body's getting enough oxygen, and focusing on your breath has a lot of other positives. Not only is it providing oxygen, which your body needs, it also calms you down. It gives you something to focus on that's not the conditions, so that you're not panicking. It gives you something to focus on that's not the moves, so that you're not thinking too much. It's a good kind of meditation that brings you into the moment. So I recommend that for a lot of people, is to really focus on the breath. Good advice from Chris as well. I'm going to try and read that book this week, and we can talk about it when we're up in Denmark. Rich. So it's important to, wherever you're sailing, to kind of have a look at the conditions and watch how other people are getting out, because there's often a path, like you're saying, a path to get out. In some places like Hokipa, there's a very well-defined channel, and like Hokipa looks quite scary because you've got these really powerful waves and they break on the rocks, and it looks pretty intimidating. But if you know how the currents work, it's actually really easy, super simple, and you just ride these currents like a conveyor belt, and they take you out and around. And so if you know where to go and how to get in those currents, then you're not doing any work at all. But it just takes that knowledge, and you can get that knowledge by watching, by asking people. All right, cool. Well, I was not expecting this nice conversation about fear and waves and bad days, but I really enjoyed this. And it's interesting that you guys bring this stuff up, because it's stuff that I've been thinking about this weekend too, and I think it's interesting to talk about, and it's interesting to be aware of and to practice. It's good to practice getting over bad days, or getting over fear, or dealing with whitewater, dealing with these situations. And so this is all important stuff to talk about. I'm just going to take a quick note. I'm writing a little book to go along with the clinic, and I'm going to make sure I put that in there. All right, so let's get into the posts. So we've had quite a lot of discussion this week, I'm gonna try, everything's a little bit out of order, but I'm gonna try to go chronologically. So I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything here. Scrolling up, if you guys are following along on the page, scrolling up from last week's live stream. All right, we were talking about bottom turns. And all right, then Jeff posted some pictures and also some videos to go over of his bottom turn. And then we had some discussion of that during the week, and then Jeff also has a follow-up from when he was sailing. So let's go over the pictures and videos, and then we'll go to the follow-up, and then we'll go to the other posts. All right, I'm gonna flip the camera around. All right, so here are the pictures. So from a variety of different places and conditions. So there's a lot of good things going on here. Jeff is committing, he's getting, on the rail. We see some good spray. He's really committing to these turns. The timing looks good in all of these. He's heading towards power section. I like how this looks. We can't see what's happening with the board, which is the most important part, but the body position looks good. So if we look here, we can see that the heel is coming up a bit and that the knee is extending over the foot. And one of the things that we were talking about in the discussion over the week is that you really want to think about getting your body in a power position so that then you can transfer power from your core down through your butt, through your thighs, through your calves to the board, your toes to the board, and getting the board on the rail. So I drew these little stick figures to kind of show that. So what the position you want to be in is this, so a bit more, this is a bit, it's not quite a right angle, but with these kind of angles, and then this is like a power stance, right? Like if anyone has done power lifting in the gym or something, they'll see that this stance is familiar, where you're really activated here through your glute, and you're able to transfer power here, and through your knee down, you've got kind of a 90-degree angle with your leg and at the ankle. And so then what you don't want to be doing is like this, right? Where you're extending the knee over the foot and the hips are forward and you're not able to put power down. So like one of the, here, let me flip this around. One of the exercises that I recommend, and we went over this last week, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. So you can take a chair and you can really get in that position, your back straight, knees are bent, and you're really pushing, and then you come forward. So you can start kind of in this position, and then you're leaning forward and really engaging on the toes, and feeling that power coming down through your body and really leaning over. And one of the things that's important to remember is that the faster you're going, the more you're able to lean over. So if you don't have any speed, if you're standing in your living room with a chair, you need the chair to support you, right? But on the water, when you have speed, you've got, I think, is it the centripetal force that's holding you in? So like the more you can press on the board and the more you can lean forward, and that carve, the radius of that carve, the arc of that carve, your speed through the carve will allow you not to fall forward on your face. And there's all kinds of different conditions, right? So the amount that you're able to commit and lean forward depends on the conditions, depends on your speed at that time. But just know that those two are related. And so then the faster you're going, the more you're able to lean into the turn. The other point that was raised about these pictures is that Jeff maybe can lower his boom. So I recommend for most people, if you're riding your boom up here, try bringing it down, somewhere around your nipples or something. See how it feels. It's going to feel weird at first, but especially for turns, for bottom turns and cutbacks, it really helps. And if you want kind of a simple look at why, right? So if this is your mast and you're pushing from up here, this is how far you can get it bent over. If you're pushing from down here, right? That's how far, right? You can get it way more over, right? It's just really simple physics. Is that even physics? I don't know. Right? So the lower your boom is, you're really able to get the mast over, the sail over more, and also you can just maneuver it a lot more with less movement. And from free ride, from freestyle with a high boom, you want to lower it when you get in the waves. And I'm constantly adjusting my boom. Sometimes in some conditions, I find I want to have a higher boom because I find it gets me planing a little bit earlier, and that's important. But in like down the line wave riding conditions, or where I'm really focusing on the turns, I'll bring it down. And they see some guys, I did a little survey of some of the pro guys, and some of them are riding it down here. It's really interesting, and it's something where there's not really a right answer. You look at Victor Fernandez or Jagger Stone, who are two really great windsurfers, and in different conditions on different days, sometimes they've got their boom up here, and sometimes they've got it like on their belly button. It's crazy how low they ride it sometimes. And there are just different factors that determine how they're making that choice. And for down the line wave riding, if you're focusing really on turns and that maneuverability, lower is better. And there's a point where it becomes really uncomfortable. It's more comfortable to sail around with a higher boom. But for the performance on the wave, bringing it down a bit will help. And then you also get used to the comfort level pretty quickly. And you don't want it so low that it's really uncomfortable and you're slogging around. Oh, yeah, boom catching on the tail of the board. Sometimes my boom does that too, actually. And yeah, that's not fun when the boom catches on the tail. I'm trying to think of a solution for that, but I don't have one. I'm sorry. I think it's just tough with just different body types and the way that the gear is designed. I'll think if I can come up with something to say to that, but otherwise just it's something you've got to figure out a way to deal with. Which, if you have some tips on that, post it in the group, because I'm sure you're not the only one with that problem. Is a lower boom better for front or back loops? I would say probably not. I think having a high boom is better for most jumps. Because you don't want so much maneuverability, actually. You want things to be kind of slower moving. You don't want to be able to move the sail around so much when you're doing these jumps. I think for forwards, you don't want the boom too high. That can probably be bad if it's too high, but especially for back loops, I think a high boom probably even helps. I don't think a low boom helps. So that is one of the comments. And then when you're bottom turning, another thing to think about is your hip rotation. So you want to rotate your hips into the turn. So if I'm doing my bottom turn this way, rotating my hips this way. If I'm doing my bottom turn this way, rotating my hips this way. So what you don't want to do is be in this position where you're driving on the back leg with the hips rotated out. You're getting a lot of pressure here. Rotate the hips in. And if it's onshore, then your upper body is going to be kind of rotated the other way, and you're kind of fighting, your body's top half, bottom half are a little bit disconnected. But you want to have the hips rotated into the turn. That's pretty important. Boom height completely depends on rider height. Yes. But the relative height then is independent. So a higher boom for a taller rider, is in a different place, but it will have the same feel difference that for when a shorter rider also moves his boom up. So their booms are in different places, but if you're changing the boom higher, the feeling will be the same. And if you're changing the boom lower, the feeling will be the same. But yeah, they'll be on different places on the boom cutout, for sure. For sure, that makes a big difference. All right, so let's move to some of the video that Jeff posted. So I'm gonna click on the first video, get this full screen, and flip the camera around. All right, this is from Maui. So there's a lot I really like here. Comes down the wave, speed, looking ahead, good timing, getting on the rail, coming up to a power section. His hips are rotated into the turn. There's a lot that I really like about this. Coming for the cutback, perfect timing, really perfect timing. All right, so let's watch this again. So, there's more here that I like than I don't like. If I'm gonna start looking at, so again, I think the boom could be a bit lower. His boom looks like it's over shoulder high. I think it could come down maybe, I want to say 1.5 to 2 inches, which is about 5 cm. Gets on the rail. I like how the board is carving. You can tell the board is on the rail. There's spray coming out. He could be a bit more forward and sheeting in the sail a bit more, which would again put more pressure on that rail, get the board more over. But that's a little nuanced. He's doing a good job. If he's sheeting in a little bit more in the beginning, then it's easier to keep this pressure on the rail. So you can see that there's wind that comes into the sail. So he sheets out because the wind is coming into the sail, and that kind of brings him a little bit off the carve. I don't know if you guys can see that. But he's still carving. Here I would like to see a little bit more front foot pressure. This is a little bit more on the back foot than I would like to see, but still really nice. And then going for the cutback, and then just kind of getting blown out. The timing I think is pretty good. It's very windy conditions, and the wind is what's stopping the board from then turning around, because he's getting lift from the sail kind of in this direction, and then it's hard to keep the board connected and the rail connected. So what you can do in this kind of situation is to get really, really low. So here, to bend the knees a bit more and really drop the butt. So when you're bringing your butt down, it can really help transfer your weight into the rail of the board. So really using your butt and your body weight and using that to keep the board on the rail. So once the board goes flat, which it's starting to go flat here, then it's not going to be able to stay in the wave anymore, and it's going to start coming out. So here you can see the board's kind of on a flatter angle, and then it comes out. I think that would help a lot. The other thing that would help, like for this kind of turn, is really thinking about having the wave do the work for you. I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is trying to steer the gear too much. You want the wave to do the majority of the work for you, a majority of the redirecting for you. So instead of steering that cutback around, let the wave push the board and guide the board. And so I think there's maybe a little bit too much steering, too much force, which then also makes it more difficult for the board to be picked up by the wave, because when you're steering the board is a bit flatter in the water, and when the board is being picked up by the power of the wave, then the bottom of the board is really in contact with the wave. So I think that's a good thing to think about, is like, okay, you do your bottom turn, and then you get in a place where the wave is going to do most of the work turning you back around. I think that's a good way to think about it. All right, let's get to this next clip. I like this a lot. Yeah, so again, there's really a lot good going on there. Looks like it's at the end of the wave. Oh, kick out. Okay, so let's go through this a little bit slower. So coming down, so he comes down the wave. Leans forward. I like this. I like this a lot so far. I can't see what's happening here. Gets on the rail. So I would say that this is just a little bit too early on the wave. A little bit too early or a little bit too late, depending on what you want to be doing. So if you go earlier, then you can be doing the turn here before it breaks. And then if you go later, you would kind of ride this down a little bit more, and then maybe start bottom turning here and then come up to do your cutback there. Because the problem is there's really not a lot of wave pushing back at Jeff. So going back to what we were saying before, is you want the wave to be doing really a lot of the work of turning the board around. And here, where the wave doesn't really have a lot of power, there's power here, and then it's going to start setting up over here. But at the moment, there's not a lot of power. And so Jeff's really having to do a lot of work steering it around. But despite that, I think he does a pretty good job. He's coming up and, does this rail turn, which is pretty good despite there not being a lot of power there in that section. And you can tell he's really forcing it. I like that he's looking with his head. He's looking back this way with his head. I think that a lot of people have a tendency, myself included, to look down the line at where they're going to go next, which then, of course, makes it difficult to complete this turn going back this way. So my biggest thing with this is the timing, and we don't know how it would have looked otherwise. So I like that for how, given what the timing was, but I think the biggest issue there is the timing. All right, next clip. Okay, I like the timing here a lot better. And that was a nice turn, another turn. You know, Jeff's doing a lot of good work going rail to rail. There's really a lot I like here. Okay, let's go back to these turns. So drops in. So here, I think the most important point that I have is going back to the power stance. And you can see that the weight is really driving on the back foot, and I think the front knee is too far extended, is too far forward. So it is not able to direct power through that leg. So you can see that the knee is really pushed forward there. So yeah, going back to what we were saying before, I think having that power stance position will put a lot more power through the body, through the front leg, to that forward rail, and the board will get a lot more on the rail. Because like if you look now, this turn, it's kind of coming like this, whereas if you're really pushing that pressure on the rail, you know, you can come down like this and come back up the wave and do a much shorter radius turn and come more like you know, a U shape rather than like I don't know what that shape would be. Right? Do you guys see what I mean? Like this is like kind of a line rather than a U. And yeah, so having that power stance would put the pressure on the rail, and the board would be a lot easier to turn. So here, Jeff is doing kind of what I was talking about before, where he's really getting his butt down and using that power. He's bringing his hands close together, getting the butt down, and using that power to get the cutback rail engaged. And he's got good timing. This is a power source, right? So he came from a power source to a power source, so he's picking up power from the wave. And then I like this carve a lot, you know, the rail's engaged, he's coming around. I like that a lot. So my biggest note is about the bottom turn. Can the powerlifting stance help to have a shorter radius? Yes, I think for sure, because you're putting more pressure on the rail. Now, of course, you've got to adjust that stance, right? Like the stance I'm talking about is for like the initiation and that like power movement. But then as you're coming through the turn, you're adjusting your body to then come up and transition to the cutback. But yes, it can definitely help with a shorter radius. So I like that cutback a lot. So now we're coming into this next turn. And so like the same thing again, you can see that this front leg, because the knees extended so far forward, right? You can see here that there's actually no power going through the front leg. It's all going on the back leg. And by getting that forward rail more engaged, the board will just be more engaged, you know? So it'll be more tipped over, and you'll be turning, right? So like here, see, there's so much pressure on the back foot that the board is riding up this way, right? Which then it's going to be slowing down, and it's not even really turning, you know, it's still pointing there. Again, here he's really using the butt to, you know, bring the force into that rail, which I like a lot. He's looking with the head. So I like this a lot. You know, it's good timing. So, you know, coming up to this section, again, good timing, using the body and the hands and the head, I think, in ways that really work well to get this rail engaged, right? Like, see, that's a nice cutback. Good round turn. I like it a lot. So what Jeff needs to work on are these bottom turns, but the cutbacks are looking really, really great. So it's just kind of about getting this a little bit more engagement on the rail, and then that will help to have more control, more speed, and a tighter radius on the bottom turns, which then should just help the cutbacks as well, and it'll give him more control of where to do them and how to do them. The bottom turn is really the foundation for everything else. So if you've already got good cutbacks and you just need to work a bit on your bottom turn, then it's a good position to be in, because everything's just going to get better from there. So I think that stance change will help really a lot in getting that forward rail engaged. And then after that, Jeff, hopefully you can get some more videos and we can go over what's the next step. But I'm really happy with that. I'm really happy with those cutbacks. All right. Here was a question from MFT about moving the hands in the cutback. And we're talking about using putting your hands close together on the cutback. And that can help a lot, because otherwise your sail is really pulling down the wave, like down the line. And if it's pulling in that direction, then it's pulling opposite of the direction that you need to be pulling to get the rail engaged for the cutback, right? Because to get that cutback rail engaged, you're pulling up the line, right? The other way. So it can really help to bring the hands together to get a neutral sail for that reason. But sometimes you do want to keep the grip wide. Like yesterday, I was sailing in pretty onshore conditions, like very onshore conditions in room. And, sometimes it felt right to bring the hands together, and sometimes it felt right on the cutbacks, especially the ones where I wanted to do more of a carve rather than like an off the lip, where I kept the grip wider, and then I was really dropping my butt and using my body weight to then get the rail engaged, and I kept that wide grip, and I tried to use that power from the sail to get it to transition into the rail, into that cutback rail, and that process it really only works by using your butt, your body, your hips, sinking low, getting them down, getting that then board turned over. All right, we've got a few more questions. The lower boom would also help. I totally agree. I think lowering the boom is what a lot of people can do to improve their wave riding, and I think Jeff should try that. Totally agree. My boyfriend is asking, do you think onshore wave riding ruins your offshore riding? I don't. I think that they complement each other. I think that you learn a lot in every condition, and it can help, the more you sail in the different conditions, the better you get in all conditions. It's like normally I would spend my summer sailing in onshore port tack, and when I come back to Maui to sail down the line starboard tack, I've learned new things, and there's definitely an adjustment process because I haven't been sailing it, but overall I think it makes me a better sailor. So I think you have to be aware of the different technique and the different setup for the different conditions. Like in onshore conditions, maybe you like a bigger fin. Like I often do that in onshore. I'll ride maybe a bigger rear fin. And it's important then for you to realize that you're doing that, because if you don't realize that you're doing it because it's onshore and you just think, oh, this board likes a bigger fin, and then you go to the down the line conditions and you keep the big fin, it maybe doesn't work as well. And so it's important to realize, no, it's not that this board just needs a big fin, it's that this board needs a big fin when it's onshore. And then when you go to the offshore sailing, you can adjust and you put in the smaller fin or whatever it is. And you're also aware of, in the same vein, you're aware of little technical changes. Like when you're sailing an onshore condition, you're really sheeting out a lot in the bottom turn. You're doing this kind of clue first wave ride coming up. And in down the line conditions, you're a lot more sheeted in. And so sometimes you can see people who sail a lot in onshore, and they come into offshore conditions and they kind of really sheet out in their bottom turn, and then that's not good. So it's recognizing that, there are differences, but on the whole, I think the more you sail in a variety of conditions, the better you are in all conditions. So I think they really complement each other. All right, let's read some more questions. So the question from Tristan about back foot versus front foot oriented boards. I think the technique is basically the same. I think the back foot versus front foot is a little bit more nuanced, but the basic technique is all the same. And that's a distinction that people make a lot, these back foot versus front foot boards. And I understand it, but I also don't put that much power in it. I think that what you're doing is still pretty similar. And that, there are some adjustments you have to make, but the basic technique is the same. All right, Jorg is going to try a lower boom. Yeah, sounds good. Try it lower. Try it, 5 cm lower. See how it feels. And the thing is, when you're trying something new like this, is it's going to feel weird at first. It's going to feel really weird because you're not used to it. But give it an hour or whatever it is, or even a whole day, because you got to get used to it and then see how it feels on the waves. And you might notice it right away. You might notice that sailing out, it feels terrible, and then you catch a wave on the way in and it feels great. But you might be too not used to it to see the improvement on the wave at first. So give it a little bit of time. I think that's important. All right, so I'm gonna get back to the questions. So Rich posted a little report. So I love reading these reports. It's great to hear about the progress. Just a little feedback from my sesh today. No movies because he's camping. On the bottom turn, he focused more on the pressure on the toes, and this worked very well. Could feel the difference in speed and slightly different timing for the top turn, but more spray, more aerials. Great. Even tried a one-hand cutback. Very cool. Back loop, it was hard to find good ramps. Wind was gusty. And then basically landed a back loop. That sounds great. Really good job, Rich. And front loop, didn't manage. I'm going to try and find a video of what I'm talking about with these catapult things. I'll post that for you, Rich. And I'm super happy to see the progress. Can't wait for the video. All right, and now we've got a push loop from Tamo. Let me get this full screen, flip the camera around, turn off the sound. All right, so here's a push loop from a GoPro. I'm gonna go through this once full speed and then a bit more frame by frame, if I can do that. So it hits the ramp. Flies around. And then over rotates. All right, so let's look at the takeoff. What's going on? So looks like you're getting the rotation pretty good. One general thing about the push loop rotation is that you sheet out to continue rotating and you sheet in to stop rotating. So like, for example, at that point, why is this not working? So for example, at this point, once you finish rotating, you can sheet in here. So you can still see there's like kind of some wind coming against the sail. But once you're upright, so actually it's more like here, you can really sheet in and that will stop the rotation. So that might help. Otherwise, I think there's some things you can do to improve the takeoff. It's difficult for me to see with this angle. So there's really a lot of spray here. And it kind of looks like, though I'm not sure, Tamo, maybe if you're there you can tell us, but it looks like maybe your mast hit the wave. Is that right? Did you hit the wave on the takeoff? Which can happen. If that's the case, and I kind of think it is, I think you want to wait before rotating a little bit. You want to get a bit of height before rotating. You don't have to go too high, but you don't want to rotate so fast off the ramp that then you're hitting the water again, right? The other thing is I can see that you're bringing your body very close to the sail, the rotation, and then it comes farther away. For push loops, for me, I feel like when I'm going up, I'm kind of a bit far from the rig. And then as I'm doing the rotation, I'm coming with my body closer to the rig. And then as the rotation stops, I'm coming farther away again. So it's a little bit opposite of what you're doing. You're starting very close. And so if you have a little bit of separation and then you're coming close and then separation again, that might give you more control in the rotation. The best tip that I received for doing push loops is to think of it like a cheese roll, like a reverse cheese roll. And you just want to roll over the mast, basically. You just roll over the mast. And once you get over the mast, then it's like you're just sheeting out to come back upright. Let me quickly check if I've got a video lined up of a push loop. If not, for sure I can find one and I can post it in the group. Let's see if I have a push loop. Do I have a push loop? Back loop. All right, I'm just checking if I have one on my computer. All right, I found one, but I don't know if this is good. This is a no-handed one, which where no-handed is pretty different because you're hooked in. So let me see here. Okay, so here I'm gonna flip this around and play this push loop from me. Again, I don't know how helpful it is because it's no-handed and it is pretty different, but I'll find a better one and post it in the group. But maybe there's still something to learn from this. So taking off, and then, so if you can see here in the rotation, so if you just kind of ignore that first part was no-handed, I've come up into the wind and I'm pretty far from the gear, and then I'm pulling myself close to the gear. So you see how the front arm is straight, and then in the rotation it bends like this, right? Bringing that front of the sail close to me. So I think that is pretty important. This kind of, with that straight front arm, and then the front of the sail comes in, you get the arm bent like that. And this is that moment where you're kind of rolling over that mast. It's kind of like this reverse cheese roll. And this is kind of a good example, actually, even though it is no-handed, because I don't really do a head throw. And you don't have to do a head throw with the push loop. Get on top, and then see, I'm really close to the gear here. Look at that, both arms are bent. See that? Both arms are bent. And as I come around, I'm sheeting out to get upright, and then I sheet in again, not to over-rotate. So you see, I'm really sheeting in here, and that's what stops the rotation. So the sheet out pushes me upright, and then the sheet in stops the rotation, and I can look at the landing, and you can see, like, from that moment where I sheet in, I just stop rotating, right? I'm just falling from this position. And you can have really a lot of control in the move. And I should have a million videos of push loops, but I just don't know. They're not labeled, or maybe they're on a different hard drive. Let's get back to this video. So my tip for this is to wait a little bit, so it can tell you it's just starting to go off the water now, and you're already pulling the sail in. When you're going off the water, I want to see a bit of separation, wait a little bit, and then bring the rig in, really with the front arm bent, kind of rolling over that mast, and then push out and get the separation. So I think you really need to wait a bit off the takeoff, be farther from the gear, and then bring it around. All right, this was a post about tax, but that's an older post. All right, here's a back loop from Tristan. Let me make this full screen. Make it HD. All right, question from Tristan about the sheeting out. It depends. So it doesn't really stop the rotation if you're sheeting out with both, but it depends on what's happening with the rotation and with the wind. So if there's, I think you have more control if you're if you keep the front hand static and you're just pushing out against the backhand, and then it really just pops you erect, pops you upright. Whereas if you press on both hands, you can get this whip back where the sail really fills up with wind and it flips up. But it depends. It depends. Sometimes you do really want to push on both hands if you want that whip. If you're struggling to get that last bit of rotation and there is a lot of wind. All right, let's check your back loop. Coming off the ramp, coming around. Looks nice, actually. So you were saying that you felt like you went too far upwind, lost the speed, you weren't able to get your height. So one of the reasons that I say to go more upwind is because I think that most people don't go upwind enough. And I want you to find the limit. So there's going to be a point where it is too far upwind, and maybe this is that point. And so part of this exercise is finding how far you can jump into the wind. And maybe you found that. The other thing to really focus on is really focus on going straight up. So here you're already starting to kind of turn a bit as you go off the wave, and getting really that upper, that vertical height, which I think you say in the description that it was difficult because you didn't have much speed, because you felt like you're going too far upwind, which then maybe you found the limit, maybe this is the limit of too far upwind, and that's a good learning point, right? That's the reason we do this. And so then the next times you go maybe just a little bit less upwind, try and get more speed. But this is great. This is the process of learning. And it's so cool that you posted this and shared it, because this really shows what learning looks like. Learning is experimenting. It's going upwind and trying to go so far upwind that you go too far upwind. And that's how you learn. So this is the process. I really like to see this. So try to go a little bit less upwind. All right, Carl, good night. Martin, it's funny with push loops. Like, there's some people who don't do push loops or don't do back loops on a certain tack. So, like, for example, I'm really comfortable doing push loops on starboard tack. I'm really comfortable doing back loops on port tack, and I can do both on either side. But if I'm not really thinking about it, if I'm not really paying attention, I'll more naturally go for a push loop on starboard tack and more naturally go for a back loop on port tack for whatever reason. Levi, for a long time, didn't do push loops on starboard tack. And he did huge push loops in Pozo. And I didn't really do back loops. And I guess he can do the jumps on either side, but I don't think I've ever seen him do a push loop at Hokipa or with starboard tack wind. So there are these moves that are pretty similar, and because they're similar, it can be difficult doing them both. And I think that's one reason why guys tend to do the push loop tabletops, because then that is a pretty different feeling than the back loop. It's a bit more removed. And that's why you see a lot of pro guys doing push tabletops and back loops rather than just push loops and back loops and push tabletops. Because there's something about the wiring of the brain where then it can be kind of weird because they're similar but also different, the push loop and the back loop. And so some people have one side where they do one and the other side where they do the other. So that's pretty normal is all I'm trying to say. All right, so we're going to end this with, so it's just a comment from Jeff, where he was applying what we were talking about with the bottom turns, and he had a great session, getting very forward and low because of the speed. Cool. So it sounds like it was working for Jeff, the comments that we made during the week. So I'm very happy about that. And that's it for what was posted. Guys, thank you all for coming every week. I really enjoy this every Sunday. And remember that post photos, videos, questions in the group, and hopefully there's discussion during the week. And then I'll go over the things in my coaching on Sunday. And let me know if you have any requests or something specific to that you want me to talk about. I'll post that forward. I'm trying to think if there was other things I need to remember. I'll try and find a push loop, and I'll post that forward video if I can find one of what I'm talking about. And then thanks again, everyone, and I hope it's windy this week and you get some good footage and photos and post it in the group. If you've got friends who are joining the group, I've had a lot of requests now to join. Tell them to fill out the questions. There's some membership questions, and those are really just to make sure that the people are windsurfers or that they are paying a little bit of attention, because I don't want spam or anything else in the group. So just if you got people, some people are getting rejected because they don't answer the questions. So just tell people to do that. If they've got a windsurfing pic in the profile, I'll automatically accept them, but otherwise tell them to answer the questions. All right, guys, good night. Thanks for joining, and have a good week. Good windy week. Alrighty.